Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for Tech Talk with MazTech and RunesZar.
Welcome to our third episode of the TechTalk podcast with RunesZar.
Hello, MazTech. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you all.
And happy Monday to y'all. This is our third episode. Like I mentioned, we've got our two guests today, which is YemmyTheFerret and Sheree, also known as Late to the Fallout. Say hello, guys.
Hi, I hope everybody had a good weekend.
Hello, hello, hello. It's me, YemmyTheFerret.
And it's a special day for Yemmy today on Monday. Happy birthday, sir.
Oh, thanks, Maz.
Yeah, I think he is the cunning age of 13 years old today. So congratulations on being a teenager, man. Am I a little bit off?
I hope I'm not 13. I don't want to live through those years again, Maz.
Yeah, I understand that 100%. So here's the thing. Earlier this week, I dropped a video on my channel about Google Stadia. I don't know if anybody has heard of it before. If you haven't seen the video, probably not. It only was released. The information was released, not Stadia, but the information was given away in a press conference by Google. They are actually starting their own streaming service. They didn't really give too many details to it. Did a little bit of a demo on how it works, and I'll go into a little bit more on that. Supposed to release sometime towards the end of 2019. Their main focus is to really cut down on input lag as much as possible. Everything is going to connect wirelessly from their controller. So you can buy a controller for this, and you can use this controller on your laptop. You can use it on your PC. You can use it on your cell phone. You can use it on your tablet. You can use it on a Chrome-enabled television, okay? So I was very objective when I released that video, okay? But my problem with that is the fact that how is that going to affect, and I'll ask any one of the three of you, how do you think that's going to affect console sales? How do you think that's going to affect the landscape of video games overall?
Well, I don't think it's going to have an initial impact upon console sales, but if the technology takes off the way that consoles did, then potentially it could be the downfall of consoles altogether, and now everybody will be running a mini PC within their homes.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Definitely going to change the landscape of things.
I mean, I just think that, you know, with everyone having different internet connections, and I mean, we've already had, everyone has problems with Discord chat just because everyone's in different regions. You know, imagine having something like that on a streaming service. You know, you're playing against someone who's playing with with a Stadia controller with their phone, and they're at McDonald's. And just imagine how much lag input that there will be, especially during a fighting game or something like that. And I just feel like it's probably the wrong way to go, because I would rather have dedicated LAN internet connection. Like, I'm on LAN, you know, we're good. But as soon as I go away from LAN, guess what? Things don't work as well.
I agree.
I'll put Smash Brothers Ultimate on the table right now, because you go online in that game and you're facing people all around the world. And what do you know? Throughout every single match, there's always from a little bit of lag to, the frame rate is 1.
Yeah. Sounds like Fallout 76.
But it's to like regions. So like when you sign on to this particular region versus the whole world.
Exactly. And so Google put that, what you had just mentioned, into account. They take that into account. And what they ended up doing is they have server farms that span across 200 different countries. And this controller, like I said, you don't have to have the controller, but the controller is designed to connect wirelessly to the server, not to your computer or anything like that, to reduce input lag. And also the server does all the rendering, all the buffering, and kicks it out to you as video. So I'm with you guys, because I don't see how that's going to really combat input lag. And I've heard horror stories about Smash like that, because they don't even have a server farm. That's the problem. They connect directly to each other. Like the two players connect directly to each other, and that really cuts down on the lag as well. So I'm really not sure how this is going to affect gaming in the future based on this. I don't see how it's going to change or revolutionize it, so to speak. My concern about this right now is, what if this really takes off? So they're talking about, I mean, I've even heard terms thrown out like pay per play. And I'll be honest with you right now, that just makes my eardrums burst. Instead of having a monthly charge, because they didn't give away how much it was going to cost, but they know exactly how much it's going to cost, I'm starting to hear things like pay per play, that it's going to cut into sales of PlayStation Now, which is their streaming service. The new subscription service of Xbox is going to cut into that. And now it sounds like Phil Spencer, who is the CEO of Xbox, they're not taking this laying down. They already started talking about potentially doing this thing called xCloud. So I'm not sure how that's going to really, we don't know enough about this streaming service yet for it to make a huge impact. I get PlayStation Now for my kids periodically, but I have noticed that if you are not, if you're not hardwired into a LAN, if you're trying to do it wirelessly, you're pretty much dead anyway. One other thing that I was thinking about as well is I mentioned in the video that the Stadia is going to operate at 10.7 teraflops. And what teraflops are, 1 teraflop is the ability for a processor to do 1 trillion operations per second. So this is 10.7 teraflops. Layman's terms, it's really, really fast, okay? So your PlayStation 4 Pro operates at 4.2 teraflops. The Xbox One X currently operates at 6.0 teraflops, just to kind of put it into perspective how fast these systems move. That was the comparison that they made during their press conference with the Stadia, okay? That it's 10.7 teraflops, which is more than the Pro and the Xbox One X combined. My question is, why are we comparing it to current generation systems when this is not really slated to come out till late 2019, and it's rumored that at the next state of play for Sony, they're going to announce the PlayStation 5, because I believe their next state of play is around the time E3 would be coming out. Is that correct, Yemmy? You know more about Sony than I do.
Yeah, it's slated to come out around that time.
So, not that it really matters, but if we're talking performance, and they're going to bring teraflops into light, like as to what it is, because before I started doing this video and before I started researching it, I had no idea what the hell a teraflop was. I'm not going to sit here and talk about, oh yeah, I knew what teraflops were. Why didn't you? I had no idea because it didn't mean anything to me. They're talking about how fast it can process information, how fast it can process games, which I guess if you stop and think about it, if they're going to be doing the rendering and the buffering and the input directly from their server, it has to be really fast, right? So I guess my concern is if we're comparing it to current gen systems and it's not going to be out until the next gen systems start coming out, it's only going to have the edge for a handful of months, maybe 6. If it comes out in November and the PlayStation 5 doesn't get released until the end of 2019, it's moot what they're talking about. But even still, if the Xbox Scarlet comes out in March of 2020, as does the PlayStation 5, well, then their presentation really doesn't mean anything, does it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's not a worthless presentation, but like you said, you've kind of already gone over everything that's like, if the new generations do come out, it's like, what's the point of having a Stadia if the PS5 can do it better, or if the Xbox can do it better? And what it sounds like to me is that Google's kind of taking I don't know if you remember the Steam Deck from Steam. They were trying to sell that a lot, which was another streaming service, and that kind of flopped a little bit. But they're taking the same premise, and they're hoping that this one doesn't flop because they have Google on it instead of Steam.
Sure. And it flopped a lot because of connectivity and input lag as well. Is that correct, if memory serves?
Yeah, I didn't look into the specifics of it, but I would guess so.
My frame of thinking is, if you're going to take a parallax view with this seemingly dodgy innovation, what you've got to look at is how the other industries, the other producers, the game industry, like Bethesda, are going to actually view this. I mean, are they going to does it take any technology or reprogramming of the basic game engines to actually work with this, or will it just work with anything? Can you play, I don't know, Black Ops or, chess on it, for instance? Is it a general one? Because it seems like they're saying it's going to be something that it just might not. And if it falls flat on its face, a lot of the game industry are going to be, peed off. And a lot of people who put money into it, they're going to say, well, hold on, this only lasted 3 months. Where's my money back?
Exactly. And that's a really good point. That's another good point, Rune, is that you have to look at Google as a company and their reputation as well. So those of you that know about Google, they have a reputation of not sticking to their projects. If you look at Google Glasses, that was a pair of goggles that you would put on your face, which I thought was a ridiculous
God, yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Because you had access to the internet. You take your glasses and you look at something. Say you're walking down the street and you look at a dress in the window, and it would tell you what that dress is, who the manufacturer was, and how much it costs. Which is great. It's a great idea in theory. But what happens when somebody gets behind the wheel of a car? You know, that's my issue there. You know, I don't need to have a whole bunch of information blocking my view from driving, and you know people are going to be doing that. So they abandoned that. Also, they had gigabit internet that they were starting to roll out, and their gigabit internet was it's kind of like fiber optic. You would bury it 2 inches under the ground. It was a very, very, very shallow burial, right? And you would rip the asphalt up. You'd lay down the wire, and then you'd recover it with blacktop. Well, they abandoned that as well. And I can't remember off the top of my head what city just started implementing that. I think it was somewhere in Kansas. They just started implementing that, and they abandoned it. So they had to rip everything back up and take the wire back out. Now, you know, in terms of how much would that cost to replace? How much was that cost to repair? How much did it inconvenience the city to go ahead and do this? Just to be like, yeah, you know what? Never mind. I don't want to do it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So here is the release list so far for Stadia games. Ready? Doom. That's it.
Look,
Doom is the only one that has... Well, Bethesda gave Doom to Stadia to have as a launch game, which is great. And quite honestly, if you watch the announcement, the press conference, I'd be willing to bet that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is going to be on that release lineup as well, because that's what they were using to demo. So, I mean, you're not going to be like, well, yeah, you can use it to demo, but you can't use it when it launches. So I would imagine it would be those 2 games, okay? But at the same time, what happens if we don't get more developers making exclusives for the Stadia? Because to be honest with you, the only reason why people buy specific systems is because of the exclusives. Am I wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong.
I think that the Google thing's going to be more like when Nintendo first came out, and then after Nintendo came a CDI. I don't know if you guys remember a CDI or not.
No. What is that?
But it was basically pre-Dreamcast, pre-PlayStation. So it was one of the first ones that actually used discs and put their games on discs. Well, their games weren't all that great or anything, and I ended up getting the system for super cheap because it was like a demo, and I got all the games with it. But it was before Sega Genesis, or right about the time Sega Genesis came out, but people just weren't ready for the discs yet. Even Dreamcast did horribly until PlayStation came out. It's like when PlayStation came out, everybody was ready for discs. But Dreamcast almost did it better.
It's almost ahead of its time at that point.
Exactly. So Google may just be a little bit of ahead of its time and trying to do too much at once.
It could very well be. So if people buy into this and they start paying, let's say it's a monthly charge. I mean, at least if it's a monthly charge, you can just cancel it, right? But the people that are buying in, can you buy these games? Do you have to rent them? Is it part of a subscription service? What if you have to buy those games, right? And on top of that, you had to, what happens if they cancel their service? If you have to purchase the games, or if it's like Amazon Prime, we spend $120 a year for Amazon Prime. And on that, you get free streaming videos. But there are some videos like the new movies that come out, the digital ones, get it before it releases on Blu-ray, that kind of stuff. You can buy those, but you have to have the service in order to view them. So if I stop paying for Amazon Prime, then I don't have access to the library, okay? So what happens if I have to go on to Stadia, purchase these games and have a membership, or do a pay per play? I invest over the course of 2 years, $1,200 in games. What happens if Google just decides, I'm bored? you can't do that with something like this. It will really piss off the gaming industry. Now, on the flip side, if it takes off really well, then you got Microsoft and Sony that are scrambling. But
that's also the reason why I like buying certain games from certain, like on Steam. I never buy a game from Steam at full price. I always wait for it to go on sale because I don't technically own that game. Like, it's not necessarily mine. But if I go to Origins in my Sims account, hell, my niece and my niece's friends all play The Sims off of my account, and they can download it to their computer at their place because I own that game.
right, you're only buying the license on Steam versus buying the actual property on Origins. You're absolutely right. So I guess if you are, it's kind of like a buyer beware type thing, I guess, with the Stadia moving forward. And of course, like I said, this is all speculation. We don't know really anything about the Stadia beyond what they said, and they pretty much just spent an hour saying it's so we got this new game console. Well, it's not really a console, a game service, and it's really neat. It's fast, and thanks. So they didn't really give us what we wanted to know. How much is it going to cost? When is it going to come out? It didn't really touch base on them. So I don't know. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to add to this before we move on?
I must admit, that's the type of thing I would actually take out insurance policies before I got, just in case I got ripped off for a huge amount and was left with a very expensive paperweight, which is what the controller might end up as.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of paying for a game and then paying for the privilege to play it.
Exactly.
That's like going to the movie and, you're paying for your seat and the movie. They don't charge you separately. Right, sir, this is £7.50 for the seat. It's a nice comfy one. And this is a nice view of the screen. But if you sit over here, it's £2 cheaper. But if you're sitting here, it's going to cost you £18. What? No. £10. Give me my ticket, the goddamn little twerp. That's what you say. I'm very reluctant and very dubious about this, to be quite honest. Very.
Well, the one thing that concerns me the most is, since I am quote unquote a Sony fanboy, Sony likes to follow in the footsteps of a lot of different developers and makers of video games. So, like, even though our console exclusives are amazing, but everything else that Sony tries to follow other companies on usually turns out to be a waste of time. Except for the VR headset, I think everything else Sony has tried has kind of failed. Kind of like when the Wii came out, they had the motion controllers, and when the Xbox Kinect came out, we had the PlayStation Eye thing. And when the Nintendo Classic consoles came out, Sony had to put out a Classic, and it was worse. And I feel like if Sony goes, this streaming service might be a good idea, maybe instead of PS5 having a disc, a disc port, it'll just be all digital, and you'll stream games to it because they're like, that might be a good idea. I'm concerned because they like to do that kind of stuff. They like to follow in other companies' footsteps and then consequentially fail.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that. We're at a crossroads right now where just the whole industry is changing. Those of you that know me know my stance on microtransactions. And on DLC, specifically when it comes to abuse. I'm just really concerned that this is going to cost players more than anything.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's gonna cost people tons of money because one, you'll probably have to upgrade your internet to even try and get as good streaming as you want to, and two, you're gonna have to buy the console. Well, not the console, but you're gonna have to probably buy a subscription service, the controller. Anything else you can imagine, and imagine like putting Black Ops 4 on the console. Well, that game is littered with microtransactions, so there's another thing you have to pay for. It's going to be too much money, and people aren't going to want to do it, almost guaranteed.
Well, on top of that, though, Yemmy, I'm glad that you mentioned that because it's one thing it was a point that I wanted to make. How is that going to affect the lack or the absence of net neutrality? Because the end of 2018 in the United States, Ajit Pai, it's like saying a swear. That's like the C word to me. Okay. So what happened was they got rid of net neutrality, which gives power to the cable companies, to the internet companies, that they could pretty much, if they wanted to tomorrow, they could be like, it's $1,500 a month for your internet and no questions asked. Is this going to draw so much, even if you upgrade? I mean, like you had mentioned, do you have to upgrade? Most likely, yes, depending on what speed you have. You have to have fiber optic. Is it even available? But how do we know that it's not going to, these cable companies eventually aren't going to be like, well, you want to play Google Stadia, huh? If this becomes really big, because, Sony and Microsoft, they have household items that do make an impact on the economy and on society at this point. So it's not out of the question that the Stadia could do the same thing. Will that get the cable company or the internet providers attention enough to be like, yeah, well, to be able to stream on Google Stadia, which you're paying, let's say, I'm making it up, $20 a month. It's going to be $7.99 a month to have the internet speed in order to play your Stadia, or else we block it or we throttle it, which is exactly what they could do now. Am I right?
But they're already kind of doing that.
How so?
Because you can get through packages through your cable company to where it only allows X amount of megabytes per minute, blah, 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 for download speed. And then you can upgrade your package, pay $30 more, increase your speed, upgrade this. They do it with their cable channels too. You want pay-per-view, HBO, you all end up paying an extra fee for it.
Right. They've always done that with their cable, the channels and everything like that. But at the same time, I have noticed that they have different internet packages. And to be honest with you, at least they're somewhat still affordable. And I know that some places in India, it's like the equivalent of $200 a month for very, very low internet, which is why you don't see a lot of people from India streaming. I just happen to have a couple of friends on YouTube that are from India, and they actually told me about that. One of them stopped YouTube altogether because of latency issues. So I worry about that, and that's a good point, Sheree, that they're already starting to do that. But doesn't that mean that this could make it potentially worse? And you get that package, and on top of that, here is a peripheral that you have to purchase for $8, $10, $15 a month if you want to use this service. Because theoretically, with the net neutrality, they were talking about potentially charging per website as well, if you remember. $5 to use YouTube monthly, $8 a month to use Facebook. So, I mean, this is... And thankfully, the internet service providers haven't abused that yet that I'm aware of, put that in play yet, where they can cut off your websites, just like channels, if you don't pay that specific price on top of your internet service in the first place. So I'm wondering if this is just going to open the door for more, for lack of a better word, bullshit.
Well, at the same point in time, all those other things, they're even like with Fortnite and their microtransactions, they are slowly conditioning a new generation to just accept it. Don't question if it goes up a few bucks here and there. Don't question if it goes up $30 at the end of the day or the end of the year. Right.
It's a good point. It's a lot to think about. At the end of the day, this could definitely change a lot of things that we're used to with the gaming industry. And, good luck to Google. But, I mean, if it takes off, you better stick to it, because that just gets really annoying. In the gaming community is unforgiving when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, there are some games that I used to have on my PlayStation that I can't play anymore, but I paid for it, but they don't have it anymore. I haven't forgotten stuff like that. So I know that it's stuff that moving forward, they need to really make sure they have their ducks lined up, and this is something they really want to do. I mean, if they're going to back out of it, this is the time to do it. Just how I feel.
Yeah, there was a time when there was a bunch of games for like the PS3 era that were just online only. They boasted that you could have like 100 people in a lobby, and you were just doing this huge team deathmatch kind of battle. And those didn't last too long because they realized that the cost for server for the internet was too much.
Oh, yeah.
So they shut them all down. And, you'll still go to a store, whether it's GameStop or a used GameStop. You'll still find it on the shelves, and it's like $1. And you're like, is it even worth $1? I mean, you put it in, and then it says, oh, can't connect the servers, and that's it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that's not right. And the gaming industries do that every once in a while. It bothers me for sure. And it's like one of those things with Activision. What happens, because they were doing Guitar Hero games for years and years and years and years and years. You had to buy the guitar, and then they're like, oh, well, you know what? Rock Band is doing a whole bunch of instruments. We'll do that too. And then they stopped making them. Now they have the library. What happens when that library finally closes its doors, when it loses its popularity? They're going to put the money in their pocket and they're going to run. You can't use that anymore. They're not going to keep that server up if it's not super popular.
And I mean, I still play all my Guitar Hero games and all my Rock Band games. And I remember when Rock Band 3 closed its doors and they said it's over, no more, no more internet connection, no more this or that. I was a little bit scared because, let's say I get a new my console breaks and I have to get a new console. How am I going to download all the songs? Like I have over 1,500 songs downloaded to my Rock Band 3.
Oh wow!
And it's like, how am I supposed to get that money back? There's no way to get that money back. Kind of the same thing with Guitar Hero. If you go onto the Guitar Hero 3 download page, it's just the free songs that they released.
Right.
It's just all the free songs, like the guitar battles and the free Christmas music. And it's like, okay, well, what if I paid for X, Y, and Z? How am I going to get that back if I delete stuff?
Exactly.
So it's a little concerning, especially put in that perspective. But I still play the bass songs, so I guess I guess I'm still getting my money's worth out of them.
Right, and Activision is one of those companies that are really frowned upon, and that and EA, they're probably the most hated game development companies right now. Would you agree with that? Especially EA with Battlefront.
EA more over Activision, because at least the Activision games you can at least play them without having to buy something. But EA, when you originally put in Battlefield 2, Battlefront 2. I remember starting up that game and they automatically gave me 3 crates or whatever they were, and I got purple ranked gear in them. And I'm like, I'm only level 1 and I have purple stuff and I can equip it and I can kill people in like 3 hits because I have the blaster upgrade or whatever.
Right.
And so that gives people incentive to then go, oh, I should buy a bunch of these. EA's the bottom of the barrel when it comes to developers. I mean, we'll probably talk about it later, but with Mass Effect, they rushed Mass Effect, so it turned into shit. They closed down studios left and right because, it only made $1 million. That's not enough. No one deserves a sequel. Fuck it.
Right, and that was my segue actually. So we will definitely get into that for sure. But yeah, EA has been. They are the epitome of microtransaction abuse, and that's one thing that I don't like. Now, I don't like DLC either. I love DLC. I don't like having to pay for DLC. Okay?
I don't like day one DLC.
Exactly. You put that shit right in your game. That's how it works. That's abuse. So what happens at that point is it's almost, and it's our fault as consumers because we allow it. If we just went ahead and decided, hey, you know what? I'm not buying that shit right now. I just spent $60 on this game. I guarantee you that would stop. I've been gaming for a very, very long time. I remember when games were $30. I remember when games were $40. I remember when games were $50 right up until the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 came out. Then all of a sudden they were $60, but that's because the Xbox 360 came out first. And they're like, yes, but when the Sony releases the PlayStation 3, we're going to go ahead and cut the cost back down to $50. And I'm thinking to myself, no, you're not. And they didn't. And so now, here we are. Now they're coming out with the Super Deluxe Extra Special Gold Platinum Edition, which you could buy for $9,000. And it's like, and you can get the season pass for another $50. So now I'm at $110 to buy a game for $60. And then I can buy the season pass for $50, and we're going to do 3 DLCs with that, which is just an excuse to be like, just get the goddamn game out and we'll complete it later. And now I get to, if I want my guy to have a certain look about him, I have to pay for that on top of that. And Ubisoft did that with Assassin's Creed Origins when that came out. Not Odyssey, but Origins. They said if you buy the deluxe edition, which I did for $100, then you get all the DLC that goes with it, which I did. And you get also all the skins, all the accessories, all the mounts that come out with it, which I didn't. They changed their mind and said, oh yeah, well, if you want to use this camel, which I don't want to pay for the camel, so not that much, I'll use it if it's free, but it's going to be $4 for this. It's going to be $5 for that. It's going to be Helix points for this. Oh, by the way, you could buy 100 Helix points for $5. It's like, that has to stop. And I'm afraid that this Google Stadia is going to just push that to the nth degree. I don't know why EA hasn't stopped that. I know that with Battlefront 2, didn't Disney really crack down on them for that? Because they completely abuse it. It's literally something like $5,000 to play 100% of that game when it came out.
I'm pretty sure they took the rights away from EA. They're restarting Lucasfilm Entertainment or whatever it's called.
Oh, very
Not
good.
Lucasfilm. What was
LucasArts.
the Star Wars one? LucasArts. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I knew what you meant though, which is, that's what counts. But that's good. I thought that they had slapped them on the wrist and say, if you do that again, we're going to take the rights away. But it sounds like they actually did take the rights away, starting LucasArts again. That's probably a good idea. And, a lot of companies spin off like that. Half of Infinity Ward broke away from Activision after they fired the creators of Call of Duty. They're the ones that did Modern Warfare 2, 3, and this year's Modern Warfare 4. It's coming from Infinity Ward. Well, they fired the two creators of Call of Duty right before they were supposed to get a $20 million bonus for hitting their certain sales. They fired them. So they went off. I'm sorry?
Well, yeah, you're probably just about to say what I was about to say, because they went off to do Respawn, and now they have one of the most popular battle royale games out there right now.
There you go. That would be Apex Legends. And also, is it Apex?
Yeah.
They did Apex, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they did the Titanfall series, and then the spin-off of that is the Apex Legends.
Exactly. So that is the people that do Apex Legends and Titanfall. They're the original creators of the Call of Duty series. Fired by Activision. Well, guess what? If they didn't do that, Activision would be making money hand over fist with Apex Legends, which is chock full of microtransactions. So that would be right up their alley. BioWare is the ones that did Mass Effect, and they have just recently or are in the process of breaking away from EA because of stuff like this. Really blamed for Mass Effect Andromeda, almost seemed rushed. And this is a topic that you wanted to talk about, Yemmy, talking about the history of Mass Effect and how it's progressed over time, and that it's kind of a sad story. I'm going to hand it over to you.
It is quite a sad story, because BioWare was chock full of potential to be one of the greatest companies out there to make video games. And what they did, well, I'll start where I started Mass Effect with Mass Effect 2. At the time that I was playing Xbox 360, I just got my Xbox 360. I was into shooters and dumb things like that, because that was the games at the time. In a time where shooters were my favorite things out there, I picked up a copy of Mass Effect 2 on a whim from one of my friends, and I put it in and I played through and had a better experience than any of the Call of Duties, than any of the Battlefields I've ever played. And I was like, this is the future of gaming right here. You have choice, things matter, characters are fleshed out, and everything is great. Sure, there's the mining stuff you have to do, but everything from the mining to the suicide mission, it's all fleshed out and there for you to take and change. And I've played through Mass Effect 2 so many times. I've done everything that you can possibly do. Full Renegade, full Paragon, something in between, killing all the characters, saving all the characters. It's just crazy how... And they did one thing that I had never heard of before, which was taking a game, stuff from the first game and putting it into the second game. So if something happened in the first game, it would take that save. It would, like, let's say you save the Rachni Queen. Guess what? She kind of shows up in the second game. And in the third game, she definitely showed up. So that was something I had never heard of before. So I went back to Mass Effect 1. Still a great game. Still an awesome game. A little bit clunky now because things have, of course, advanced. But you can tell that they really put in everything that they wanted to put in. They had so many ideas for these different classes and the different elements of it and using your powers and stuff like that. And you can really see where they refine things with the second game. And then with the third game, EA stepped in a little bit more. EA was like, oh, this is making tons of money. They were twiddling their mustaches and adjusting their monocles. And they said, you know what would be great for Mass Effect 3? Multiplayer. You know what would be great for Mass Effect 3? A major character in the goddamn game is Day 1 DLC. A major character that if you do not have in the game, you miss out on hours and hours of background story, character interactions, everything you can think of under the sun, which to me at the time I wasn't really concerned about. But now that I think about it looking back, I go, oh, that was egregious of them to do. And then they rushed Mass Effect 3 just enough that the creators did not want to put in the ending that they wanted to put in.
Right.
which ruined the experience for a lot of people. Me, myself, I was okay with the ending, especially after the extended cut DLC, which was free. Thank God it was free. But to me, the one thing that really shone and the one thing that like made me realize that yes, this was a rushed game was because the multiplayer, they worked so hard on getting the multiplayer into what they wanted. They were like, oh crap, we forgot to do this the end of the story because EA was pushing that multiplayer so hard, and they were like, we have to have loot crates in it, and we have to have, you can't just have all the characters at the start. You have to, find them in loot crates and stuff like that. And I remember going into Mass Effect 3 and going into the multiplayer mode and buying one crate and saying, holy shit, this isn't worth it.
What did you end up getting? Do you remember?
I got like a pistol mod, a weak shotgun, and it was stuff that you didn't really need.
Wow.
You
And a golf
then-
plushie.
yeah. And then, EA was like, okay, we're shutting. They said they were done with Mass Effect. BioWare said, and then all of a sudden, it's like a few years later, after everyone's kind of been over Mass Effect 3 and people are kind of starting to forgive them. They were like, okay, here's Mass Effect Andromeda, and they didn't show any gameplay, and they didn't do anything like that. They just said it's coming, and then a few years later, we got Mass Effect Andromeda, and it was everything that I thought it was going to be, which was a mess. It didn't work. It had glitches. The story was not fleshed out. The characters were lifeless. The voice actors didn't know what they were doing. They were obviously not directed well enough to put on a good performance. The animations of the characters looked awful, even though they've tried to update the game so many times to get the animations looking right. It's still like, it just looks like a mannequin talking. And then to shove the knife into the back of BioWare, EA was like, you know what? It's not making enough money anymore. Just stop working on it. So all the updates they had planned, all the DLC they had planned, was gone. They essentially slit the throat of Mass Effect and said, yep, just sit over there and we'll do something with you later.
And that is how EA, which was built on consumers, that's how they treat their consumers. And they literally took a massive shit on a really great series because 1 and 2 were fantastic. And not everybody, because I did a little bit of research on this, not everybody has really forgiven the ending for Mass Effect 3, but they don't blame BioWare for that. They blame EA for that because it was rushed. It's like, hey, get it out, make us some money, make us money. So
the thing that I tell people is the journey up to Mass Effect 3 is where everything is fine. Like, you get, well, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The journey up to the end of Mass Effect 3 is where everything is right. Everything is like fleshed out. Like, I'll give you an example of something that's really always really stunning to me in terms of like, okay, this is something that's spanning from game 1 all the way to the last game. In the first game, you have the choice to either kill a character or let him live. If you let him live, he comes back in the second game as the leader of a colony. If you do everything that you can for that colony and you help him out, in Mass Effect 3, you can cure the sickness that is ailing that colony and all the different species of that colony, and you can have him join your fight against the Reapers, which are the major threat of all 3 games. And that is something that can change so intricately with each different decision you do in all 3 of those games. And I didn't see any of that kind of thing in like Andromeda. Like when I was playing it, I was like, okay, so this could possibly change something in the next game, but yeah, we're not getting a next game.
hell no. And I'll be honest with you, even if they got another game, which they said they were going to be done after 3, they've lost their credibility. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Especially after Andromeda came out. What a mess it was and everything like that. So, Sheree, do you have any experience with Mass Effect 3? Like, did you play the game? What did you think of it? I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this ahead of time.
No, I actually haven't, so I have no clue about what any of it is.
Yeah, I know that RunesZar and I don't have a lot of experience with it. I played Mass Effect 1. One thing that I didn't like about Mass Effect 1 was the navigation in it. Now, those of you that have watched my live streams, I tend to get lost often. So there's no...
Point lost.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a lost command in my live chat, for Christ's sakes, and I didn't create it. But the thing is...
a lot.
Yeah.
And I stole it.
A lot.
Yeah. Well, at least I'm not the only one then. Thank you, Late. But the thing is, there's no navigation in the game. I thought that the inventory system and everything like that, I thought it was really, really hard, very unintuitive, hard to learn. Then again, I didn't really give it a lot of time either. And I heard that people that did learn how to navigate it 100% learned to love it. But
well, you'll be happy to know that they streamlined everything a little bit in 2 and 3. See, like I was saying with 1, it's like that game, it's aged very poorly, but what is there, and if you look past all the technical limitations that they had, and the the inventory and the stupid planet exploration that was really slow and repetitive, there's such a great story in there, and there's such great gameplay after you kind of learn how to do it. And when you get to 2, it just multiplies times 2. And then when you get to 3, they kind of lose a little bit of that. And when you get to Andromeda, it's almost back to square one with a lot of things. Except the combat's better in Andromeda, I will say that.
Anything that EA touches turns to shit, apparently. You can look at the NBA games. I remember growing up.
Please, no.
I was playing NBA Live 95 all the way up probably to 2006, 2008. Then I don't know what they did, but it is utter garbage. You can't take the 2K series and blame that for being just a better product, even though it is. You got 2K Sports that came out with NBA 2K anything, and it's just an amazing experience when you play those sports games. Same thing with hockey, same thing with football, but they go out of their way to improve it every year. EA, not so much. It's just like, just slap a different skin on it and re-release it. Let's move on. There's no storylines. There's no new angles. There's no better graphics. It just seems to be stale. Am I the only one that feels that way?
I've thought that about the Madden series for a while. Ever since it came to the next generation and after Madden 25, all the games started going down in quality, and it didn't seem like it was going anywhere.
Yeah, and that's...
The Madden series reminds me of Kid Bop. Yeah, or Now, the CDs, Now TV, or Now This Century, or Now Music.
Oh, Now That's Music.
Yeah, that's really what the Madden series reminds me of, is Now That's Music.
Yeah, it's the biggest issue with these types of games is they come out every year, okay? We get it. And a lot of it is, improved by some of these companies. EA, you're just doing a roster change. That's all it is. Trades, anything like that. Well, I could just do that myself and save myself $60. You're going to come out every year. Give me some value. Give me a reason other than maybe some updated graphics to buy your product. And EA just kind of drops the ball. But, well, I can buy jerseys on their shitty game for $2.99 a jersey. That's not, there's no value added there. Rune, what do you think about everything going on with EA? I know that you watched a video that kind of set you off with Activision and EA last week.
Yes, it did.
What were your thoughts?
Yes, I was slightly dischuffed at what I was reading and seeing, and I was flabbergasted at the fact that, there was even a game, I can't recall if it was an EA game, but there was one, they actually admitted that they were preventing people from leveling to force them to buy DLC and microtransactions. And that's not nice. Yemmy's just pointed out that the extended cut was actually downloadable content, so which expanded the original ending. What? No, what? What? No. Yemmy's just paid out for the damn game. Why the hell isn't he getting all the content that should be in it? Because that's a linear storyline. It's not an open world one. Yeah? So
right.
He should be able to just go, oh yes, well, I did this in Mass Effect 1. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Yemmy. So you did something in Mass Effect 1 and then in 2, and you were expecting the Queen to survive, but evidently that was blocked because you didn't have this downloadable content pack. Is that correct?
Well, No, the extended cut DLC added things to the end of the game that people were complaining about. So like
Right.
people didn't think that the end was like fleshed out enough, so they decided to add. They literally added still images after the game was over, to kind of like Fallout or something like that. They did change minor things throughout the ending, but in the end, nothing really mattered what you did, which is one of the points I forgot to bring up, because you can go through Mass Effect 1 through 3, you can do everything that you can possibly do to defeat the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known. And you know what happens? You get the same cutscenes, you get the same animations, everyone still dies, and you end up having to choose between 3/4 technically different choices at the end. And I was like, and with the extended cut DLC, it added the fourth ending, which you can do absolutely nothing at the end, and everyone just dies anyways. And or you can, I'm sorry, and you can see some still photos of the future of all the characters that you interacted with throughout the game, and it was like, it was just a big ugh. It was a large exhale.
To be quite honest, I mean, that's like saying, well, we've added an extra line to one of Shakespeare's sonnets because he left out an apostrophe.
Right.
No, that's what it is. If I'm going to sit down and read Macbeth or something, I don't want some pea-brained mollusk to have written an extra line because he thinks it should be in there. I want to read, what was in there. Now, there's something else that I picked up on. It was Andromeda, Mass Effect Andromeda, and it got mixed or average reviews apparently. But there was a reviewer, The Giant Bomb.
Yep.
They actually included it in the worst games we have ever played. Now, apparently they were fairly venomous about what it actually was and why they decided to say that and include it in that list. So, why, if the game's fun, that's okay, yeah. But it's a linear storyline. Why do they muck things about and put things in, and then, I mean, still images. They couldn't even be bothered animating some characters that were already technically animated, or even edit things to get they still image. It's really fair. Yemi, that's Ferry. I was going to call it. Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. That just bugs the living daylights out of me.
No, yeah, it is.
You're getting DLCs. You're having to pay for DLCs to get what you should get. That's wrong. Can I just?
The DLC was free for the extra.
It was free.
Yeah.
Right. Apparently, I misread that somewhere that it was actually you had to buy the damn thing.
It was free, and it was actually
okay.
They only recreated it. They did the extended DLC because people were so pissed off at the ending. I mean, they would have if people were like, well, screw it, whatever. They'd have been like, well, good, because we just wanted to get it the hell out so we could make some money. It was really the people that was like, you know what, this is a piece of shit ending. I've been playing all three of these games, and these games should be played in order. They really should, yes. Based on what Yemi was saying. Your actions in part 1 affect what happens in 2 and 3, okay? So by the time you've finished all 3 of these games, you're very much invested in the series and the storyline. So for you to be like, having your little premature ending there, and you know what I'm talking about, it's one of those types of things that's like, well, what is this shit? It's a huge letdown. There's no payoff. So if I'm sure, even though they made the right choice by not charging for DLC, I guarantee you there was a lot of deliberation whether they should charge for that or not. I promise you that if they had charged for that, that would have been the end for them.
At least Fallout 3 had consistency.
Yes.
It's DLCs. Because I don't know if you know that if you haven't played Fallout 3, play Fallout 3 because with the DLCs, because it changes it completely. It changes the ending, but it amends the ending so you can continue further.
Absolutely.
And depending on the choices in Fallout 3 that you make, the second DLC, which is Broken Steel, that taxed my memory, that, it actually changes the situation. Depending on who you sided with, you do get different intro into that that DLC, and that's grand. But when it's sort of like a storyline, not an open world, but a consistent storyline, as Yemi just said, or you just said, as you both just said, that makes a hell of a difference. It really does.
I plan on playing 3 once I can get it to work on my computer.
They
I'm
have
having a bit of problems trying to get to work with my Windows.
they have patches on Nexus for that, Sheree. Because I was having problems
Yeah,
with
I
that
just
as
haven't
well.
looked them up yet because I'm not done with New Vegas.
There you go. Yeah, you've been playing New Vegas for a while, which is awesome. And I love New
Almost
Vegas.
a year.
You never get done with Fallout New Vegas.
So, Rune, I got to put you on the spot, man. Because you mentioned Broken Steel. And you said it taxed the memory. What were the 4 DLCs for?
4 DLCs were, in order of appearance,
Ooh, in order of appearance. I like it.
Broken Steel,
Yep.
Mothership Zeta. I'll skip to the 4th one, which was Outlook Point.
Yep.
And the 3rd one
My favorite
was the one set in Alaska. Operation Anchorage.
Operation Anchorage. There are actually 5 of them. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. I forgot about that. I forgot about Anchorage. So,
And for my next trick, I will not put a rabbit out of a hat, but my hair out of my bottom.
right. So the 5th one being the pit. So
And the pit was brilliant.
the pit was the best one.
It's in between Operation Anchorage and Outlook Point, which was the final one, because that's basically telling you where the Vault Dweller went to, the Lone Wanderer, disappeared to. The idea is in their unofficial canon lore, he actually ended up going there and spending the rest of his life there.
Which is why the whole umbrella is Operation Anchorage. All 5 of those DLCs fall under that name. And Bethesda, at least, if they do anything right, is tell a story. Graphics glitches, broken games, bad press, as up until just recently with Fallout 76. The thing they've always gotten right is the story, to a certain extent. And they always build on top of their lore, which is fantastic.
Speaking of storylines, do I have time to put on the mask, the spandex, and do the caped defender?
Do you think, man?
Right. What it is, recently I saw somebody complaining about Elsewhere, which is a new DLC for Elder Scrolls Online. And they were saying, oh, well, no, it's taken ages to do this, and this should have been out immediately in the base game. Well, the problem is, these take a long time to do. The character class, the new one, the Necromancer, took a year and a half to do, from concept art.
Wow.
Right through to actually designing the animations and the colours of them, the colours of the spells, what animations they would have, what animations the summoned creatures will have, what colour they should be. Now, the thing is, Elsewhere is massive. And it is literally massive. And there's a few people who pointed out that, Bethesda said to ZeniMax, oh, you've messed up our lore.
Oh, yes.
The thing is, did you know, this is true, did you know that when they created Morrowind, they had no idea of who actually won the Battle of Red Mountain, which is what the entire storyline of Morrowind is set around.
If your casual game player doesn't understand that, that's one thing. But if you're going to create the game, you might want to know that.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody at the studio at that time knew what it was, because the storyline designer left, and a new guy called Ken Rolston, who's actually a very famous name, or was, in the gaming industry, came in and took it over as a multimedia consultant and redesigned the storyline. And he was going hairless, the poor man, trying to find out any lore whatsoever concerning what really happened at Red Mountain. And up until recently, that was the same thing, and it was only decided upon recently by ZeniMax of who should actually, or what won the Battle of Red Mountain and how it was conducted, etc., etc. But I digress. The thing is, Morrowind DLC took a while to do. Yeah. So did the new one. Summerzar, and now we've got Elsewhere. And a year and a half just for the character class gives you an idea of how long it actually takes to do these things and get right. Because I haven't come across any glitches in ESO at all yet.
Knock on wood.
Knock on my skull.
I will tell you that ESO has become quite polished, and it actually started out not as bad as Fallout 76, but it was a lot emptier.
Oh yeah.
It did not get very, very good reviews. Actually, the reviews were so bad that it took me years to get into it. Actually, you purchasing it for me, RunesZar, it's like, well, now I kind of have to play the game.
Well, this is it. Force your hand. I was forcing your hand there, MazTech.
Exactly. So I definitely
put your cards on the table and play the goddamn game.
Absolutely. And I'm glad I did.
With an open world like Morrowind, they have to develop each region as it goes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at Skyrim with the Beyond Skyrim mods. Well, the DLC size mods, to be quite honest.
That's for sure.
But with a game like Andromeda Mass Effect, because it's a linear storyline, you do expect the storyline to be completed before they release it, and that's just my 2 pence. And as for the other thing about microtransactions, well, I mean, the only reason I'm not swearing is because Sheree is here, and I don't swear in front of ladies.
It's all good. It's not like I haven't heard it before.
Well, you haven't heard it coming from me, and we'll leave it at that.
I love it. I love it. Speaking of Sheree, I wanted to put Sheree on the spot here. Sheree's been a friend of mine in our community for a while now. Plays a lot of Fallout games. Speaking of Fallout and Bethesda games, currently working, as she had mentioned, on Fallout New Vegas, which is arguably the best of the entire Fallout series, which it's not. Part 3 is, but that's neither here nor there. I wanted to call attention to her YouTube channel, because she does a lot of streams, and unfortunately she's I'm working when she streams, which really sucks because I haven't been in one of her streams in a very, very long time. She is a fantastic YouTuber. She does a great job with her streams. Fallout New Vegas recently, or most recently, does a lot of reviews and some Fortnite with her daughter, Little Fallout. I want you to talk about your channel a little bit, Sheree. Tell us about yourself.
I started the channel originally because Mr. Hubby says, "Here, play this game. You'll like it." I said, "Okay." So I played Fallout 4 originally, and I played it all the way through, vanilla, and on God mode, because if you actually watch my YouTube videos, I suck at aiming. I have Stormtrooper aim, and I'm proud of it.
Very, very nice.
But no, so I played that one all the way through, and then I started building, and then I found Cordless VII's channel, and he was doing buildings and Final Render. And then so I started putting my building videos out, and that's where I built my foundation from. And then I started watching Player 2, which that was he was a lot of fun to watch back in the early days too. Mm-hmm. But I started watching him, and he was very nervous on his first live stream. So I was like, if he can do it, I can do it.
Absolutely.
So then that's when I started live streaming New Vegas.
So why did you start your YouTube channel? What compelled you to have that creative outlet?
Well, I've actually had a few other YouTube channels before where I did anime music videos, or even videos of like family outings to Disneyland and things of that nature. So I went ahead and just took, because I've been making videos since 98.
Wow.
I was doing Sailor Moon music videos. In fact, I went ahead and put on one of my early music videos from World of Warcraft that I made for Christmas time onto my Late to the Fallout channel.
It's really, really great to have you on here. 793 subscribers for Late to the Fallout. Definitely check her out, especially if you're a Bethesda fan, especially if you're a Fallout fan. Like I said, you're going to have the Fallout communities, and quite honestly, the majority of people say that Fallout New Vegas is the best one in the series. Definitely check her out. Very personable, very responsive in her chat. Give her a subscription. Check her out, and I'm going to leave her link in the description below as well. And I'm going to talk to YemmyTheFerret about his channel now. Yemmy,
could I just interrupt you?
Of course. Yep.
It's just that Fallout New Vegas is technically a Western, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And the characters have that type of, accent. So when Sheree is reading out the lines for her response to an NPC, and she's playing a female courier, you can actually imagine the female courier character actually talking exactly like that, because she has a great voice. But I've been trying to convince her to do a voice acting session for an NPC in a New Vegas game or even a Fallout game. But it's the fact that you can firmly believe that the courier is from round those parts. And Sheree, if they ever remaster Fallout New Vegas and decide to put a voice protagonist in it, Sheree should do the female one for definite.
Aw, thank you, Runes.
Definitely does have a great voice.
That.
Brilliant. Lovely. Sorry, pray continue, Mr. MazTech.
No, it's all good. Yemmy,
Just make me blush and all.
yeah. That was not the intent. I promise you that for sure. So Yemmy is also a creator on YouTube who has been joining us today, and thank you very much for your time, both of you. Yemmy has been doing YemmyCast and the Ferret Business, and I've actually had the honor of being on a couple of his podcasts as well in the past. Yemmy has been on YouTube for a while, if memory serves. You had a channel before this one?
Yeah. Yep. I had an older channel, and I made this one as a backup originally.
Okay, what was your original channel about? Was it a gaming channel?
The original channel was more, when it started out, it was just me goofing around in high school, making little skits and stuff like that. And then as I got older and went away from high school, it was more, I started doing like 3 different podcasts on it. And then the final evolution of it was, people really liked, they were called YouTube haikus. And they were just compilation videos of funny short clips on the internet. And by the end of that channel, and I started doing like real content on this channel, I was like, I want to make original content. I don't want to keep doing these mashups, because even though I had monetized that channel, I couldn't get any money from them because obviously other people owned the video.
Sure.
So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave this old channel. I'm gonna keep it up because it has a lot of history on it. But I'm going to move to this channel and do what I want to do instead of what the subscribers want me to do.
Absolutely. So what inspired you to start a YouTube channel in the first place?
Gee, I don't even know. I think I was bored during like 2009 and 2010 summer between school. And my band, I had just started my first band, and I was like, oh, let's put some videos on YouTube. And then it just kind of stemmed from there.
Oh, very cool. Let me ask you this. I'm going to throw a curveball at you because I don't know if you've seen it or not yet. But I do notice that, on one of your streams, well, actually, not one of them, but a few of your streams, you did Borderlands 2. Have you had the opportunity to check out the release video or the teaser trailer for Borderlands 3?
Yes, I have.
What are your thoughts?
Finally.
Right.
That's literally all I can say is like, I don't care about all these people who are nitpicking it and picking it apart. I watched that video and I go, finally, something's coming, and it's taking them this long, so it better be good.
Oh yeah, it looks gorgeous. I mean, it's cell shaded. It's always been cell shaded from the beginning, like almost like a comic book. But
yeah,
this just looks different. It looks a lot cleaner. I mean, and they're beautiful games. I'm talking about an improvement on a gorgeous game series. I mean, Gearbox has got it on lock. This looks absolutely amazing. And I'm looking forward to playing.
I love.
You do know that people are still going to nitpick it because everybody's on the nitpick bandwagon right now.
Oh,
Yeah,
of course. Everyone
absolutely.
with an internet connection can be a world famous reviewer. You know, it's
Right. You know what they say about opinions. Everybody's got one. I'll just leave it at that. But I mean, the cool thing about it is that it's Borderlands series is one of my favorite series, and you're so customizable in it. You're never going to get the same set of weapons twice. I mean, it's like virtually an infinite amount of generated weapons from the computer, from its processor. I think it's just going to be fantastic. And I know it got pushed back. It got pushed back a year, didn't it?
it got pushed back. Yeah. It got pushed back a year. Yep.
About a year. And I'll be honest with you, it looks like it's going to be worth the wait. This is one of those types of games that you've got to be playing day one. I don't know. I get really, really excited about Borderlands. I picked it up when it first came out. I believe it was 2007 or 2008. I remember I rented it at Movie Gallery back in the day when it first came out. And I was like, well, I'm bored. I'll just Borderlands. All right, I'll just grab this game. I wasn't really big into researching games. I wasn't really big into the reviews and everything like that. This is like 2007, 2008. And I picked that up, and I was playing it with my buddy. We were playing split screen. And we were like, where the hell did this game come from? It just came from out of nowhere. I know that in Game Informer magazine, they mentioned that it was coming out, but it's like, okay, whatever. I didn't care about that. Mm-hmm. But now it's like, Borderlands! I mean, I love the game. I mean, it's fantastic. So I cannot wait for this game to come out. I'm going to be playing and streaming the shit out of it when it comes out. I can't wait. And if you are going to be picking it up, which I'm pretty sure you are, Yemmy, I would love to collab that with you.
Yeah, I'm about as big as a Borderlands fan as the next guy. Mm-hmm. I love. I mean, technically there's only 2 games, but the pre-sequel is like a half step. So I love all the 3 games that they have out right now. Even though prequel was like a little bit less in terms of quality, I still think that in terms of the presentation of the game, the comedy in the game, and just the way that the game was built, I think that prequel stands up with the other ones. Of course, 2 is going to be the favorite until we play 3, but I'm excited for this. I'm excited for a lot of games coming out, and this is definitely in the top 5 for sure.
Oh yeah, without question. And and you brought up a good point. Part 1 was kind of gritty. I mean, that was the way that it was. It had to present itself, and they did a beautiful job with it. 2 took everything they did right in part 1 and improved it, and everything they didn't do so great and either scrapped it or improved that as well. 3, even pre-sequel, it wasn't as high to standards in quality. You're absolutely right. I think it was more slapped together as a transitional game to 3 to buy some time, which, if Bethesda's ever listening, don't ever friggin' go 12 years again without another Elder Scrolls game. By the way, assholes. Because I am serious. I am foaming at the mouth for another Elder Scrolls game, but I digress. They did a good job with a little transitional game, and even Telltale Games coming out with Tales from the Borderlands. So you get get a little bit more lore. You get a little bit more content waiting for this big game. Now it got pushed back a year, but you know what? Don't be EA. Don't rush it. Take another year. We'll be here. That game is going to be so hot when it comes out. It's going to be a blockbuster for sure. And their DLC was phenomenal in part 2 as well.
Oh yeah, it was definitely worth every penny for the DLC. Penny. Like, it was a fleshed out world. It was a new place to go to. There were new characters who were amazing. I think the only one that wasn't there one for it was just like another battle arena that I didn't enjoy, but yeah, all the other ones are like top notch.
I'm trying to remember the battle arena one. It escapes me. The only 2 that come to mind right this second is the pirate one, which was amazing. There's 3 of them. The role-playing one with Tiny Tina, that was incredible.
Yeah, that
and then
was top notch.
Hammerlock Safari was completely badass. Even the DLC with part 1 was phenomenal. Instead of instead of Dr. Zed, it was Dr. Ned, and he was an evil doctor, and it was like kind of like a Halloween based DLC. It was just all phenomenal. It's just such a great experience. If you haven't played Borderlands 2, the Handsome Collection, Tales from the Borderlands, Borderlands 3 coming up, which nobody has, it's a hell of an experience. And I would put the Borderlands series in as high regards, personally, as I would the Elder Scrolls or Fallout. It's exceptionally exciting for me to find out that this is finally coming out, as you said, Yemmy. Finally.
Yeah, it's nice that the Gearbox puts so much love into their games. Like you can tell, like from Borderlands 1, the 2, the pre-sequel even, they put so much time and effort into making everything exactly the way they wanted, making the comedy just work, and just having the story be there, still all present. And I think that them taking a little bit longer to work on the game is totally fine by me. I know a lot of people, they hate that, like, they want the game now, but it's like, well, if you get the game now, we're going to have a Fallout 76 type deal because it's not going to be complete and people are going to hate it.
Exactly.
And then they'll
No more
fix it.
76.
Right.
Right.
It was Fink's Slaughterhouse, by the way.
Oh, that's it. Okay, yeah.
Slaughterhouse,
yeah.
yes. Thank you. And, I think, like I said, based on what you're saying here, putting a lot of love in the game, if we stay away from EA, if they stay away from getting in bed with EA, I think they're going to be okay.
The thing about Gearbox, however, is that they do bloody awful presentations. I don't know if anybody saw the E3. It wasn't their fault, but it was terrible. It was just...
Well, they're definitely better they're definitely better in like a Q&A kind of setup, like at PAX East or something like that.
Versus
they definitely can, because they can talk, they just can't present.
Yeah. Like me.
Absolutely. Not absolutely to you, though.
I can talk, but I can't present. Borderlands 3. I am so looking forward to seeing that emerge. I really am. And Claptrap's back. That may be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your point of view.
There is no Borderlands without Claptrap. Love him or hate him,
exactly.
He's a staple.
I did get Borderlands 2 on my VR system, but I haven't played it yet.
Ooh, on VR? I bet you that would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, you've got to play that and tell us what it's like. In fact, you've got to stream it and we'll be able to watch it.
That would be really cool. Sheree, what VR system do you have? Do you have the Oculus?
No, PlayStation.
You have PlayStation. See, I know that Yemmy has PlayStation VR. You have PlayStation VR. I got my kids an Oculus in December at Christmas time, and it is still in the box. And I'm wondering, to hear you talking about it, Sheree, that you've got it. I didn't even know that they had that in VR.
It came with the system along with Beat Sabers. I just got it this past Christmas, and little Fallout plays Job Simulator all the time on it.
Oh my God! See, I gotta go. I'm gonna cut this short so I can go get Borderlands VR. So have a nice night, guys. No, seriously though, that's really exciting. I didn't even know that. And I know that the experience that you guys have had with VR, at least with Yemmy, because I've heard you mention it on your podcasts. I saw you play Skyrim VR.
Right.
And you said it's worth the purchase.
I think so. I mean, I know if you have like motion sickness hugely, you're not gonna want to play this one. And the same thing with Borderlands VR. Like if you don't like motion in your headset, it's just gonna make you throw up.
Sure.
But even though I had one of the first games I got when I got the VR was that Riggs game, which is the mech fighting game, and it was so much movement that after about 5 minutes of playing in an actual real match without the tutorial, I felt sick to my stomach so bad that I couldn't play the VR for a week. And then I played Skyrim, and I was like, I'm not sure about this, but if I'm not doing too much, I feel fine throughout most of it. And I think they did a really good job with it. Like, you can actually control the way you swing. You can actually, shoot lightning out of your hands, and you feel like you're actually doing it.
That's cool.
And shooting arrows is ridiculous because you can just machine fire them. So that's why I'm always carrying around a bow and arrow just so I can just pelt people in the heads 15 times, and it's like, okay, boss fight over.
Sheree.
That is the
I'm sorry.
main thing. Sorry, I was just going to say that's the main thing about Skyrim with VR. You know, the hallucinate shooting flames out your hands. That's something you have to try at least once in your lifetime, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And Sheree, what games have you played on your PlayStation VR?
Other than Beat Saber, not too much. But my brother-in-law has the Vive, and I've played Fallout 4 VR. And when you come out of the vault, it's not so epic.
Really?
Oh.
I was so disappointed.
Oh dear.
Like, it looked really epic on the TV screen, but in VR, it just kind of skips it.
Really?
Oh, that is naff.
And then I also went ahead and tried where you get to, like, move. Your character just moves, not rather than teleports. Oh, I went forward. My stomach was 2 feet behind me.
This is, I'm not big on getting motion sickness, but I have a feeling that trying this would probably get me motion sickness.
I'll tell you what game it will work very well with. Blades.
Yes.
That setup is because of the motion of it. It's like a side sweep, or you press the trigger for a flame blast or whatever, or to block. But the motion of it looks very fluid because it's on a mobile and you're using your finger to control the movements of your character, or change your point of perspective, shall we say. I think it'll work very well for that. But that might be just my totally amateur, sod all opinion,
I mean, if you do have lots of motion sickness, the VR has, I mean, especially the PSVR has so many games that just have you kind of being more stationary.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you do buy the VR and you try and play Skyrim or something, and you go, oh, I'm gonna fall over if I keep playing, there are still so many games for the PSVR. It's in the hundreds now, and I think you can find something that is suited to your kind of play style. Like for me, if I didn't get so bad of motion sickness, I'd probably be playing a lot more games. But for me, I mostly stick with a game called Shooty Fruity, which is where you use these guns and you shoot killer fruit. It's amazing. It's an amazing game. It's one of my favorite games ever now.
Nice.
Like I said, there's something for everyone on there, no matter how bad your motion sickness is.
Oh, I was just thinking it's like Fruit Ninja in VR.
I've played that. It's actually not too bad.
That's cool. I'm having to check it out. I'm just going to have to check it out now.
Wear the straps, though, with your controller.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I'm afraid. I'm afraid of, like, I still have little kids, and they like to come up to me, and they sneak up on me all the time. I'm afraid of, like, super punching one of them. Like when I got the VR headset on,
Yeah.
Trust me, it only takes them getting hit once or twice. They will learn their lessons.
Yeah. That's what I'm worried about. It's like, my 7-year-old Snugbug, she's literally 35 pounds. If I connect with her, I'm going to have to pull her out of the wall. That's what I'm worried about. I mean,
that's when you teach them to crawl on the ground at the very far point to get around you, like an army crawl.
And if you need my attention, just tap my ankle while you're down there, and I won't hit you.
As long as you're not playing a horror game.
I know, right? Well, Epidragon has been playing Soma on his channel lately, and I wonder if they have that in VR, because that game looks really good. I've never played it before. But, man, watching him play it, it's a hoot, because he's on his channel. He won't play it in the dark like he dare, right? But he gets so into it, it made me want to play it. And I never really had the interest to play it before, but I could only imagine that in VR. I know that PlayStation 4 has an option for Resident Evil 7 to play in VR. I'd like to play. I've got Resident Evil 7. I enjoy the hell out of that game, but I bet you the experience is way different on VR, because that game that goes back to its roots. And if you're familiar with Resident Evil, it was claustrophobia that really got you, that really sold the game when it came out in '96. So they kind of stuck with it. It got a little bit bigger and bigger each time if you pay attention to it. You're going from the Spencer Mansion, which is very narrow hallways, very small rooms inside a mansion, to a police department and part of the city, which is a little bit bigger rooms, bigger corridors. 3 kind of goes out in the city, but they replaced it with Nemesis in 3, which was this gigantic bioweapon that chased you around everywhere. So that kind of gave you a little bit more of a scare. 4 was the best one, I think, in the series, just because it's an entire small village of zombies, or Las Plagas as they call it in that one. 5 is really where they kind of lost me. As much as I enjoyed the game and the gameplay, and they added the co-op, which was fantastic, they were missing that claustrophobia thing. Don't even get started with 6. 6 was a complete joke.
So okay, I know what game franchise you're talking about. It's the one that they made the movies off of. That I loved the movies, actually. I thought the movies were pretty badass.
Oh yes.
What do you guys think about the movies versus the game?
I think with the first movie they had, the first Resident Evil movie, if you changed the title, I would not have known that you were making a Resident Evil movie. Does that make sense? It didn't.
Yes.
It didn't seem like. So first of all, when the first movie came out, I think there were 2 installments to the game, maybe 3, and they had something in the first movie called the Hive. There's really no reference to the Hive in the Resident Evil series to start, and it seemed a little bit more trying to get into the action of it rather than replicating a claustrophobic mansion. I just thought it was, I don't know, maybe I'm just being overcritical of it. The ones after that got a little bit more towards the storyline of Resident Evil, but the first one I thought was kind of a throwaway. Has anybody else seen that?
Yeah, the first one was just an actioneer, to be quite honest.
Right.
I've never seen the Resident Evil movie. The only gaming movie that I like is the Doom one, and that one has The Rock in it, and I don't know, I love that one, but I've never seen the Resident Evil ones.
I thought that was a comedy, Doom. I genuinely did. I thought
Really?
they made a
I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from.
Somebody said, "Oh no, it's serious. It's a serious take on it." And I thought it was a comedy. I genuinely did.
Wow. It's a serious take on it.
It's like the reverse of a book that was turned into a movie called Evolution, with the David Duchovny out of the X-Files. And the original book was bloody terrifying. It was really sort of like, oh my God. But they decided to make it into a comedy.
They did a good job making that into a comedy, though.
Yeah, but it was brilliant. I love it. I've got about 2 copies knocking about somewhere.
That's
and
awesome.
one I bought for my cousin. But it's, I honestly thought Doom was a comedy.
That's funny.
My bad.
Well, I've gotta say, and let me know if y'all disagree here. I've got to say that they usually miss the mark when they're converting books into movies, but also they almost always miss the mark when they convert games into movies. I mean, look at Mortal Kombat. I even feel dirty even mentioning Super Mario Brothers, the one with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. Are you friggin' kidding me?
I didn't think that the first Mortal Kombat movie was too bad, but the second one definitely was off the wall.
Yeah, the first one, I actually enjoyed the first Mortal Kombat one, but the second one is like they tried to cram too many characters into one movie, and none of them fit, and none of them got filled.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe the first one was a little bit better than other ones that I'm thinking of, like Street Fighter. With Raul Julia as M. Bison. So Raul Julia was what? 5'8" and 150 pounds soaking wet. And he's supposed to be playing this big, burly, big boss of one of the most popular franchises of its time.
The worst thing about that is that was that poor man's swan song.
Mm-hmm.
Because he passed away soon after making that.
Yep.
And an actor is always remembered for the movie that he made last. By the general public, who don't follow that particular artist. And that is what he has entered the afterlife with, hanging around his neck like a huge, embarrassing albatross.
Yeah.
And I feel so sorry for him.
I'll tell you, he nailed it as Gomez Adams in the Adams Family. And then he went off to be M. Bison.
He was
Fantastic.
a brilliant actor. He really was. But that was just... I saw about 5 minutes of it, and I nearly ripped the TV out of the wall and threw it out the window.
Absolutely.
It's like you just mentioned Bob Hoskins in Mario.
Yeah.
Bob Hoskins is one of my favourite actors in Mona Lisa and Gangland. And then he did that, and I sat there and I thought, Bob lad, what? No, Bob, listen to me. What the hell are you doing, son? Don't do it. Look, walk out on the set.
Look at all the kid movies. They're raking in the dough. Come on, you got to do this.
Oh, no.
You went with John Leguizamo as Luigi. You couldn't even put a mustache on him. And and friggin' Dennis Hopper as King Koopa. What?
At the same point in time, you do have to understand that they are the ones who did say yes.
Exactly.
But when I'm rattling off this cast, I feel like I should be on drugs right now because it doesn't even make sense. I feel like I'm under the influence saying, hey, look at this. I got a great idea. Let's get Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo in as a duo. And let's get Dennis Hopper in as King Koopa. He won't even be a turtle this time. He's just going to be him. Yeah, I just have a hard time. I just didn't believe it. Now, you're absolutely right, Sheree. They agreed to it, and it made a ton of money for the kids of that age. From the kids of that age, those families and whatnot. But I just think that if you're going to take the time to make a movie based on a game, just kind of, stick closer to the actual game itself.
The thing is, Bob Hoskins' sort of appearance on movies has been rapidly reduced since he played that character. I'd just like to emphasise that. This is why Patrick Stewart boxed clever, and he only did a voiceover. And then, it's a cult classic flop, Mr. Hubby's just said. And that is literally, it was like Sting. Sting is a great musician. Then he got into acting. And he actually saved his acting career by stopping acting. Because he was just bloody appalling. The Bride. What? That's not Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Stop it. Sting. Go back to singing.
Nice.
Wouldn't that be almost like Elvis as well? Like Elvis, all of Elvis's good movies is where he sung all of his lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
His line.
The only good part of it.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. Any other comments about games, movies, books, movies before we go on to some Q&A?
The one point, going back to like books to movies, you always, I don't know, I never liked, there's a very few movies that are books to movie that I like, and usually it's the movies that I don't read first. But like I'll bring up, because it's fresh in my mind still, is Ready Player One. I read that book and I was like, yeah, this is a great book. I know a lot of people have different opinions on it, but I love the book in general, and everything that was done in the book was great. And when I heard that the movie was coming out, I was like, oh boy. It didn't even reassure me that Steven Spielberg was on it, because he does some strange things sometimes. But when I watched the movie, I was like, this is a completely different story, and it's not. It doesn't feel like a gamer wrote the script for it. It feels like an old man wrote the script and said, "Oh, you know what would be good if you just turn around, if you drive backwards." Like who wouldn't try driving backwards in that situation? Like gamers are crazy. We find glitches all over the place. We get out of the map, we go under the map. You don't think that someone's going to go, "Oh, let me just reverse this." Yeah, okay. That's all I got to say about that.
Exactly.
The thing is, books have been the biggest influence on games, more so than movies.
Books have great storylines, and TV and video games and movies are nothing more than a advancement of those stories. But they're still the same stories that you used to tell around a campfire.
I'll agree.
But it's still a fact that since day one, when games started first appearing, Lord of the Rings, for instance, was a huge influence on early video games. Obviously the fantasy one. You got all the races from Lord of the Rings that translated into games quite readily. I honestly, I'm adamant in that it is actually books that have influenced games far more than movies or TV. Definitely,
Right.
that's my 2 pennies.
Well, one game, and it's probably because it's in most recent memory of mine, right off the top of my head, would be Dante's Inferno. I loved that game. And I don't know why, but they had all the facets from the poem in the game. It's a pretty crude game. If you get offended by nudity and gratuitous violence and sex and stuff like that, you might want to skip it. But otherwise, I thought it was a very well done game, and it did stick to a lot of the points from the story.
Yeah, a lot of people wrote that game off just because they're like, oh, it's a God of War clone. It's like, maybe it was, but this game is a little bit more than what the God of War games used to be. Like, this one actually has a story that is competent. It's actually going along the same lines as the characters are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
God of War, they changed how the ancient gods acted and how they were kind of portrayed in, the culture. And it's like, well, when you look at it, you go, okay, the base of the game is fine, and yeah, the story is okay, but you have to kind of throw out everything you learned from history class with God of War.
Right. Exactly. And it is, you're absolutely right. It was kind of like almost a God of War emulator, and I think that Dante's Inferno would be a classic without God of War.
It's a cult classic for sure.
It's
but
definitely
it's
a cult
definitely
classic.
It's not up there, in like the greatest games of all time by any means.
And it never will be because of God of War. But the story is much better than God of War. Like you had said, the gods were altered to fit the God of War story versus the Dante's Inferno game being altered to fit the way the story played out with all the different circles of hell.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got some questions. I'm going to ask a couple questions, and we're starting to get some questions in chat as well. I'm going to go around. I'll answer it last. And KMP asks, what was your favorite Nintendo game of all time? Just Nintendo, not SNES or 64, just the regular original Nintendo.
Mine would either have to be Tetris.
Tetris,
Yep.
Good choice.
Tetris.
I got to go classic Zelda. No better game in the world. The first game I ever played on Nintendo was Duck Hunt, but I really loved Zelda. That was definitely my favorite of all time.
But the other thing that made Zelda really great was that you had the opportunity to save, not just write down a password.
Yes, and that was one of the first battery backed up games ever. So that's a good point. That was really, really good. I just remember if you did not hold the reset button down on the Nintendo, when you shut it off after saving, you lost all that data on Zelda, though. And the next question comes from Coco Gamer, and he says, and I might not be as polished on this one, who would win in a fight, Ash versus Bayonetta?
I'm guessing this is Pokemon because it's Ash, but I don't know who Bayonetta is. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go Ash. Old school Ash.
Go Ash. Okay.
Bayonetta is a sort of BDSM witch.
She shoots guns out of her high heels, right?
Yeah, she goes around and
among other
pain
things,
heels and leather all over, and
Ash will just throw balls at it then.
So okay, moving on.
Bayonetta would just shoot all the Pokemon that Ash came out with, and then she'd probably put a bullet right between his eyes. So I'd have to go with Bayonetta.
Well, I'll go for Bayonetta because I'm kinky. No, you'd have to actually see this character of Bayonetta to actually appreciate what I'm talking about.
Now who led into the adult world?
Yes, now we're in the adult zone.
but Bayonetta brought us there. In Rune's defense.
Yes, I was being pleasant here.
Well, it's not fair. I haven't seen.
Bayonetta is a really, really cool series. I think that she's got 2 of her own games. Character created by Sega. Yeah, she's kind of cute. Absolutely. I'm definitely with Yemmy on this. You got a whole bunch of these little fuzzy Pokemon waddling their way over to her to zap her with lightning and hit her with
Just to the Pokemon.
squirt her in the face with water. Yeah, no, that's not happening. She's going to take out a cannon out of her boot and she's going to blow them away. No more Squirtle. So that's
Very
the end of that.
Oh, I lost.
Bayonetta, definitely.
Yeah, Bayonetta bite. But it's okay, Stray. You didn't know the character, so that's okay.
I
it's
swear
any-
throw balls at people.
He's
If
throwable.
it's any consolation, I don't know who Ash is or Pokemon. It's something that I've never ever looked into.
I'm not.
Ash is, he's like a
Never
10-year-old kid, you know. He was sent out into the world to gather Pokemon for an old man who's secretly banging his mother. You know.
Now we're definitely in the adult zone here.
It's okay, kid. Just go find these Pokemon. I swear they're out there. Just go.
Get the Mewtwo. That's the one I really want. You don't come back till you have it.
I need.
Here's a ticket to Alaska. Go on, kid.
I'm
Off
gonna-
you go.
I'm gonna need at least an hour. Go find Mewtwo.
Oh, there's one Pokemon that I sort of partially recognise. That was the giant yellow gerbil type. creature.
Yeah, Pikachu.
Apart from that, I don't even know its name. But
Pikachu.
yeah.
Pikachu. That's like the Mickey Mouse of Pokemon.
They're trying to shove Eevee in our faces now. So is Eevee the Donald Duck of Pokemon?
Possibly. Or the Daffy Duck to the Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
No being mean about my Eevee. I love my Eevee and my Vulpix.
Nice.
I made Boone dress up as Vulpix.
See, you know, the key word there is made. Made them.
Hell yeah.
Good point. Just put the costume on.
Next question comes
You
from
hate me when I do that.
Next question comes from Mr. Hubby. What was the first game that you played that got you into being a gamer? And I think we answered this last week, but
Yes.
just to go over it very quickly, I mentioned in the last podcast that Final Fantasy II in the United States for the Super Nintendo, which is actually Final Fantasy IV overall, got me into the role-playing genre and just fell in love with games from that point. What was yours again, Rune?
Morrowind.
Morrowind.
That was the game changer. That's why I'm here. Because of Morrowind. So you can blame that. Blame Todd Howard again.
Metal Slug at a bowling alley on an old arcade machine.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And it's really cool how different people play different games that really get them hooked.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Metal Slug, my parents would have never known that I would like those kind of things. And then the next year for Christmas, I got an N64 with Mario 64, Diddy Kong Racing, and Banjo-Kazooie. So
Diddy Kong
It all
Racing
went
was
from there.
amazing. Oh my god.
I agree.
I think the first RPG game that really got me hooked on RPGs was Final Fantasy VII.
That seems to get a lot of people of our generation hooked. I know that that was the game that made Dimmy fall in love with gaming as well, and that was also Evil Laugh Gaming fell in love with gaming from Final Fantasy VII. That's awesome.
8 and 9 were okay, but when 10 came out on the PlayStation 2, I was like, oh my gosh, these graphics.
Oh yes. And when Final Fantasy X came out,
Different.
that was the first Final Fantasy game that had voice acting as well. So that was a really nice welcomed addition to the series. Because I don't like reading.
Yeah, I tried to go back and play 7 again, and I went, no, I'm done reading.
Yeah, it's hard. You know, that's
To
why.
talk to me. And you have to get to the cutscenes in order for them to talk to you.
Yes. Yes.
And then by the time you get to your next cutscene, you already forgot what their voices were like.
Exactly. You know, on top of that, they've got Final Fantasy VII being re-released. They're doing a complete remake of that. Sony had rolled that out 2 years ago, Yemmy. They kind of never mentioned it again. At least in a public forum.
Yeah, it feels like it's been years.
Yeah, looks like they are pushing that back for next gen systems. Hopefully, they're scrapping the idea of making it episodic. I didn't like that.
Yeah, I think they only did that because episodic gaming was huge a few years ago, and they were like, "Oh, if we do this, people will be like, yay!" But everyone was like, no.
Yeah,
So
no.
they had to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit.
Well, that doesn't work for that style game either. People don't
No,
want.
definitely not.
Yeah, I'm not going to build my character up and go around and grind and be like, okay, well, I got to wait 3 months for them to release the next iteration. It's just not going to work, and it's probably one of the reasons why Telltale ultimately failed as well.
Okay, I have another question. If they do come out with Final Fantasy VII completely redone, remastered, as true to the original storyline and game as they can get, tweaks here and there, of course, would you pay $80 for it?
Yes, without question.
But then now you're going to start setting a precedent that games are no longer $60. They're
Right.
going to go to $80 because of a new gen system.
But at the same time, going back to what I said, it's the consumer that allows that type of behavior. So whether I say yes or no to that, there are 20 million other people that would say yes to that. So that doesn't change me paying that. And I'm also not just paying for the game, I'm paying for nostalgia. And nostalgia is where they get you. But at the same time, and I see your point completely, it's our behavior that allows that. So you're absolutely right. And I'm being one of those idiots that just shelled out $80 and then probably an additional 50 for DLC as well.
People can band together and say they're gonna, not buy a game. They're gonna, strike against the game or whatever. And no matter what happens, like even though I've joined those groups before, where it's like, oh, we're not gonna buy a game because this blah 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 blah, microtransactions, blah blah blah. Guess what? Anthem is still one of the top rated games or selling games right now. Not rated, top selling games right now because everyone's buying it. Even though tons of people on the forums I go to are like, oh, let's ban against it. So even if, like, let's say, Final Fantasy VII is $80, and there's a whole group of people who aren't going to buy it because $80 is too much. They slam their fists down. People still go out and buy the game anyways, and then whoever develops the game and whoever sells the game is like, oh, it works. So let's just do it again.
Exactly. Well, maybe next time try a little bit more until they put their fist down. I've never seen a boycott of a game really work.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Except for Battlefront 2. That seemed to get so much static because it literally, and I'm talking, it's all cumulative microtransactions to get every unlockable character, to get every weapon in the game, to get every outfit in the game, to get every map in the game, to get every level in the game, character, whatever. It was in the ballpark of $4,800, $5,000 in microtransactions to unlock the full game or play it for like 4,000 hours, literally. Mm-hmm. So finally, people, especially on Reddit really cracked down on that. They're just like, nope, we're not getting it anymore. They pushed it into every corner of the internet. Just everywhere you went, there was something about any gaming site. It had something about, don't get this game. And I actually didn't get that because y'all know how I am about the microtransactions. That really pisses me off. But yeah, I mean, to a certain point, Sheree, if you came back to me with a figure of would you pay $200 for that, my answer would have been no. I can't say that I wouldn't pay $80 for a game because I have paid $100 for a game. So it would be kind of just like, oh, I'm just saying no to prove my point and prove you wrong. I got to be honest with you,
No, and I totally get it. And here's the also thing that I think we're also forgetting is the difference between, the 90s, the 2000s, and what we're going through today is inflation.
Yes.
We're forgetting inflation. Inflation has a factor into that. It's going to naturally rise the cost of your games. We're not always going to get $20 in games. Like nobody ever is going to get into Disneyland for $50 again.
Yeah, inflation definitely plays a part in that for sure.
If people will pay it, they will also raise their prices. Yep. That's what goes along with the microtransactions. Fortnite is a great example of that.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Let's see. We have a question from Gaia Legend. Do you guys like board games?
Trivial Pursuit. I used to play that quite a lot. Then I got banned because they thought I was cheating.
I remember you saying that.
But there was actually one, Talisman. I played that for a few hours and I thought that was really, really well done. And that was by a company called Games Workshop. That's it. And yeah, that was good. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I do like board games. The favorite is always Monopoly, where at the end of the night you just flip the table over and call it done.
Not talk to the people we were playing against for at least 24 hours.
But other than that, I like playing Sorry with Little Fallout. That's the one I really like playing
Very
with Little
cool.
Fallout. Sorry, because sometimes I can be a little mean to her and knock her out of the place and put her back in her home.
I know Mrs. MazTech plays Sorry and Trouble with Snugbug a lot.
See, it's a mommy's revenge right there.
Mommy's revenge.
Knocking off the board for a moment, it's a mommy's revenge. It's a small joy.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to play a lot more board games. Sorry was another one that I played, and also one of the ones I really enjoyed when I was a kid was Ego. I thought that game, like, it fit my personality perfectly. Just I loved history, and you were using like these guys who were like knights and stuff, and it was kind of like a different version of chess. So what you would do is you would have you would have a lineup of like 12 pieces, and they're all facing you, so the characters are facing you, and there's a line of and you would put them in whatever order you want them to be. And when you go up against someone, you would kind of you would stand right in front of him, and you would turn your piece around, and if yours was a number 5 and his was a number 1, he would lose, and then you would take his spot and you would kill his character. So it was a really strategic game, and stratego. And I just really enjoyed it when I was a kid. That's the one I played a lot. It was only 2 players, so not as many people wanted to play it with me as when we were in groups, but I still enjoyed it.
That's very cool. Yeah, I like board games. I got to go with Sheree on this one. Monopoly is definitely my favorite board game. It seems kind of cliche for me to say that, especially after Sheree, but it's the truth. I like being shrewd, and it gives me the opportunity to be mean to anybody that I'm playing with.
No, Monopoly's good. I liked it myself.
It's a fun game for sure. You could be a real bastard to people in that game. Chelsea Lee asks, what is the worst game you've ever played and why?
E.T.
Ooh, how about that? For the Atari, right? The 2600?
Oh, yeah. I did finish it eventually, but I remember throwing the controller quite a bit when I was young.
The story behind that game is really interesting. There's a really good documentary on that game on Netflix. If you guys want to check it out, because like when I originally heard about the story of ET, I was like, oh fuck that,
Mm-hmm.
And then when I watched the documentary, I was like, oh, this was another case of like EA trying to push someone developing games to make them even faster.
Oh yeah, that was a great documentary. I saw that one
Totally
too.
what it was. They tried to push that game out way too quickly, and it could have been way better if they would have just taken a few more months on it.
Well, you had Steven Spielberg endorsing it as well, which made it even worse. I mean, he was like, Steven Spielberg plays, why don't you? They just really pushed that, and everybody had egg on their face. Anybody that was part of that, and even Steve Jobs was part of that project. And it became part of a landfill. I mean, I can't remember how many. It's been a while since I've seen that documentary. I can't remember how many they found.
There was over 700 games that were pushed into a landfill.
Over how many? 7,000?
I know there was over 700.
Yeah, over 700 games pushed into the landfill. I mean, that was almost single-handedly the end of video games. I'm not talking about the end of Atari. I'm talking about the end of video games. This was actually in the early 80s, and if Nintendo hadn't come out when it did, we might be having a podcast about a different topic. Watch the documentary, I swear.
I can agree that Nintendo saves video games.
Absolutely.
When Super Mario Brothers came out, and even with finding their little cheats, and then you get the Nintendo Gamer magazine that can tell you where all these cheats are.
They revolutionized the game industry. Absolutely, Sheree. Absolutely. And Super Mario Brothers, like you had said, that was a game unlike anything anybody had ever seen before. I mean, it was like when you go into a next-gen system, not so much 3 to 4, or 2 to 3, 3 to 4. I mean, it's gradual. If you go from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 4, you notice a difference. 3 to 4, not a super huge difference, except for some cutscenes and whatnot. But to go from Atari and ColecoVision, that was 4-bit systems, to double that and go to 8-bit systems. That was something completely unheard of. And a lot of games didn't have storylines or endings to it. I think Crystal Castles was the first game that came out on Atari that actually had an ending that you could beat the game. But Super Mario Brothers, they hit the gaming world by storm, and everybody forgot about E.T. at that point. But E.T. was seriously almost the end of the gaming industry, because that's really, Atari was the leader. They were the big dog. So for them to have such a big flop like that, that could have very well been the end of the games altogether.
I've played a lot of games, but I think the worst one I ever played. It's kind of a. See, there's so many games that come to mind right now, but I think the worst game I ever played was The Walking Dead Survival Instincts on the PC. Just a broken piece of trash that should never have been made, to be honest with you. The other one that comes to mind is Godzilla from 2015. It was a fighting game, and it just sucked so bad. I don't want to talk about it.
Nice.
The one that's sort of stuck in my mind is, I'll probably get lynched for this, but it was Street Fighter. It was the most tedious, boring, vacuous, pointless waste of my 2 hours of life, which I will never get back. And I thought, what? And in actual fact, after playing that, I never went near a computer game again until Morrowind.
Wow.
And that's true. That is actually true.
To be fair, Street Fighter was originally made for an arcade game, not necessarily a computer game, so I don't think the mechanics transferred correctly. I might be wrong on this, though.
No, you're absolutely right. Came out for arcade, cabinets, and Neo Geo.
I haven't. I think it was a console that I played it on. It was one of the Street Fighters anyway. Well, it might have been Mortal Kombat, to be quite honest. But anyway, regardless, it was... Oh my God, no. I refuse. The bile is rising in my throat. Moving on.
The worst game that I have ever played comes out on PlayStation 1. Came out right after, or soon after, Final Fantasy VII. And that game was probably not heard of by many people, but if you look it up on YouTube, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The game was called Urgies. And it was almost, it was an early attempt at Dissidia Final Fantasy. Although Dissidia Final Fantasy is actually a good game. Urgies was a fighting game. It was Cloud versus Sephiroth and the different characters from Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy IV. All different Final Fantasy, but the mechanics were awful. The storyline was shit. It was just the worst game I've ever played before this time or since. It's just nothing compares to what a piece of microwaved shit that game was. It was just terrible from top to bottom. Graphics were terrible, even for the generation system it was on. Mechanics were awful. Voiceovers were awful. It was almost like listening to, like, some of the audio on it was almost as grisly as failed attempts to have little blurbs of voice on the regular Nintendo. Mr. Hubby asks why we had to pay full price for digital versus physical copies. And I don't really have a good answer for that, because I think it's really, at that point, is convenience. I like having digital copies because, first of all, they can't be scratched or ruined. And second of all, I'm too friggin' lazy to go out to GameStop half the time.
Yeah, most of the time when you throw a disc into your console, and it takes like 5 days to update anyways, so what's the point?
Right. And
but I'm still a huge physical fan. Like, I like having it in my hands and being able to put it in. But it's like with the Division 2, with the Division 2, I threw the disc in. I had to wait for a 50 gigabyte download that overwrote things on that disc, and then the people who downloaded the game, guess what? They just play it as soon as the download is done.
yeah, and the thing is with current gen systems as they are now, the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro, what do you have to do the first time you put the disc in? you have to install the game.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? Quite honestly, if I want a physical copy, first of all, these systems come with minuscule amounts of hard drive, and these games are massive. I mean, I just installed a 60 gigabyte update on Fallout 76. Fortunately, I've got a 4 terabyte hard drive in my PlayStation 4, but they come with 500 gigabytes. So if I'm getting a physical copy, I'm doing that with the expectation that I'm not compromising my hard drive space because I have the physical copy. Instead, you've got to write that to your system in order to use it. I just don't see the point of having a physical copy.
Well, I think that also comes back to the point that I made earlier about Steam versus Origin.
Mm-hmm.
With Origin, you can install it on any other computer you want, but with Steam, if they're on your same account, only one person can play at a time.
Mm-hmm. Right, so you're paying for the actual physical property of the game versus a single license.
Exactly. I'd rather pay full price on Origin because I know I can use it on multiple computers or multiple accounts, or not multiple accounts, but multiple accounts can use it offline because it doesn't need to be an online game. Whereas, like, Fallout 4 automatically wants me to log into Steam, and I don't know what will happen if Steam ever goes away. Like, can I no longer log into Fallout 4 anymore?
No, you can play Fallout 4 offline. You can actually do it offline. I've done it a few times when the internet is being silly. Just played Fallout 4 instead of going on to ESO or whatever. So that's handy.
Right. And Rothenium actually adds in chat, some physical copies of third-party Switch games only have half the game, and you need to download the other half and install the half from the cartridge. Physical copies are so dead. They're not even nice anymore like they used to be with all the nice art books and extras. So,
yeah, I used to love getting those little books. Like the last game that I got that had an art book in it that had actual like controls and stuff like that, every fleshed out, was a game for the Switch called The End Is Nigh. And before that, I can't even remember the last time I opened up a game box and there was a manual in it. Probably back in the Xbox 360 days.
I think mine was Lunar. I remember spending extra like $20 in order to get the extra stuff that came with Lunar. That was on PlayStation 2.
Yeah, it was actually because Lunar, the first one was on PlayStation 1. I remember that because I paid extra for it as well. That's a really good game. I wish I could play that again. That and Star Ocean. Same type of concept.
But yeah, it did come with a really good book, like a small one that fit the size of the PlayStation discs. I still have my own copies, and my PlayStation 1 still works, I think.
That's awesome. I need another PlayStation 1.
I must say, I do miss the maps that you used to get with some games. Well, with Morrowind, you got a map of Vanderfell. With Blood Moon, you got a map of Solstheim. And with a map of... with Tribunal, you got a map of the Clockwork City and Alan Mix's place. So, downloading the electronic ones all very well. Yes, you can see the map on screen, but it's not the same as having a map on the wall. It just isn't. And I know how nerdy that sounds, and I don't care.
It used to be that way when Skyrim first came out. I had a map so I could just get up and reference it.
Yeah, I love my Skyrim map. I don't have Skywind. Oh, that's wishful thinking. My Skyrim map.
There we go. Well, guys, I'm going to hold some of the questions for the next one because we are way over our time. But I wanted to thank Sheree, Late to the Fallout, and YemmyTheFerret for joining us on our TechTalk podcast today. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. I really, really appreciate it. Guys, listening to the podcast, if you have not checked out Late to the Fallout and YemmyTheFerret, the links to their channels are in the description below. Please check them out. Subscribe to them. Both of them do streams. Yemmy does some podcasts. Sheree does a lot of showcases of settlement builds from Fallout 4. Please check them out. Send them your love. Say hello to them. And RunesZar, as always, my partner in crime, thank you so much for being a part of this, as always.
My pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
All right, guys, that brings us to the end of our third podcast. We'll be back next week. If you guys, and again, happy birthday, Yemmy.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday, Yemmy.
Happy birthday.
If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more podcasts like this on the way. Thanks for joining, and as always, thank you for being a gamer, and we'll see you next time. Have a great night, guys.
Bye.